Hi friends, hello, happy Wednesday. I'm super excited to be here today. I have a really fun tutorial to share with you today. We're going to focus less on card making and a little more on watercolor. So welcome to Craft Your Joy Live. I see people popping in and I know people will continue to pop in. Hi Heidi, Elizabeth, Jesse. Can see all kinds of new people popping in. Super, super fun. Okay. Hi, Kathy. She looks like she's on the road. Remember, there's always the replay. No worries, friends. Okay, couple things today that I'm going to do, something a little bit different. I am going to focus on sharing my easygoing technique for watercoloring stamped images and wet into dry technique. I'm going to talk a little bit about complementary colors, specifically violet and yellows, and talk a little bit about the color wheel. Just super simple. Kind of turned this live this week into more of a watercolor lesson, more focused that way versus the card making. We are going to make a card, but yeah, we're going to have some fun with that. Hello, Geraldine. She's been looking forward to this happening Wednesday. Yes, I usually go live on Fridays, but if you were with me last Friday, I shared that this week I'm technically supposed to be on jury duty, but you have to call like every day to see if you need to report the next day. So when I called yesterday and it said not to report, I'm like, I better get this live in this week because I could potentially be called the rest of the week. So who knows what's going to happen. All right, we've got quite a few friends popping in. If you're new to the Craft Your Joy Live, this is where I share stamp set mashups, watercolor techniques, and a little bit of watercolor magic, and I just kind of build a little bit of a watercolor lesson into a paper crafting project, and we have some fun with it. So let's go ahead and get started with the supplies. All of the supplies are linked down below in the description over here on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, the supplies aren't there, and I'm sorry, I'll try to get them back in there. But okay, let's go ahead down and we'll talk about the supplies. And I also have a little geeking I want to do today. Okay, let's dive in. Let's take off my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. I see more people popping in. Hi, Joan. Hi, Nancy. Ah, so fun. So fun to see everybody pop in. Okay, now, like I said, all the supplies are linked down below in the description, but here are the inks that I'm using today. The Amalgam Obsidian from Gina K. I've got Fresh Asparagus. I have Wild Dandelion, and I have Lovely Lavender. Okay, those are the inks I'm using today. Here is the inspiration for our project today, and we're going to be breaking it down and doing the watercolor techniques. Heidi just shared, violet and yellow should make mud, right? Yes, I'm going to get to that, Heidi. We're going to talk about how complementary colors kind of cancel themselves out, or they can tone each other down. And technically, when you mix violet and yellow together, you can get a really nice a mustardy like color if you do a nice mix. But we're going to get to that. I'm going to just kind of share that. Okay. Yes. Okay. So here's the stamp set that I'm using. I'm using Spring and Bloom. We're going to be using the Bloom, the Crocus style Bloom today. And we're going to be using some of the elements I already have pre-stamped for our end result. But this is the stamp set that we're going to be using today. I have some Gina K glue. I also finally got around to getting all of my sequins put in these little Tic Tac like containers. So I feel like, you know, I've made a little step up in my in my getting things organized kind of thing. Okay, so I've got that. Now I'm going to be using the paper that I'm using for the card is the Gina K A2 sized Wild Dandelion. I have a piece of the the layering weight cardstock, and I've already pre-stamped 3 of that postage stamp on there, and I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing with that. And the watercolor cardstock I'm using today is the Strathmore Ready Cut Watercolor. Okay, now let's go ahead and dive in to the watercoloring. We're going to be doing this card, but I'm doing it in the complementary colors of yellow and violet. So real quick, just a real quick dive into complementary colors. Let me pop this up. So complementary colors are pairs of colors that contrast with each other. So when they're placed side by side together, they make each other look brighter. And to Heidi's point, they also neutralize each other and can be mixed to create different colors. In the case of yellow and violet, when you do mix those two colors together, I'm gonna pop myself up on this screen. When you do mix those two colors together, you can get mud. But I want to show you, this is a watercolor palette that I have. That's a 12 palette that's set up intentionally so I know what my complementary colors are. Very similar to that diagram I just showed you. So here's my yellow and here is my violet. But violet is something that violet and purples you mix. You can make as a mix. But this is a palette that I've made with colors that are across a bunch of different brands. And I just kind of wanted to show. Now, if you've taken my Watercolor Wonderland class on the Craft Your Joy classroom, I really dove into this, the complementary colors and mixing a whole lot more. But today I just wanted to share it with you for the purposes of understanding how to put colors together and color combinations together for your, like your paper stock and your inks and all those different kinds of things. And today I wanted to focus on the purple and the yellow. So to Heidi's point, here's my purple and my yellow. I'm going to pop this down, this ultramarine violet color. Now when those two colors get mixed together, let me just pop a little bit more. They neutralize each other. So that purple begins to neutralize that the yellow. And when I paint it, watch, I'm going to pop this down. When I paint that color, if I had too much purple in there, I would definitely get that mud. But look, I can get that really, really beautiful mustard-like color, a neutral color, like a neutral brown color. So to Heidi, I hope that answered your question with the mix of the two colors. So you can overdo it easily when you're neutralizing the colors opposite of each other on the wheel, like when you're using especially these mixes, because to create all these colors you're using just 3 colors in the color wheel, and that's a lesson for another day. Geraldine just asked, Geraldine, great question, and I should have linked this below in the description. But this palette, Geraldine asked for this palette, where I got this. This is a porcelain palette. Oops. And I got this off of Amazon. So I will make sure I add this to the links after the live. I love this because I was able to go across all of my brands and of watercolor that I had and just kind of create this color wheel. And really, this is all the colors that you actually need to do anything, because you can mix with all these things. And I really, really like it. It's really hard to find a porcelain palette that has 12. Usually they're 10 or 8 or less than that. So no problem for the interruption. Really good question. Okay, so I see a bunch more people pop in. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss any questions. Hi, Diane from Maryland. Hello. Okay, we're going to get started. I'm going to show, I have stamped out the crocus like flower in Lovely Lavender. So I use Lovely Lavender as my base to stamp this out. I am going to show you the easygoing watercolor technique with watercolor, and I'm going to use a marker. I know this came up in one of our lives. I think it was last week. I think it was Kathy too, asked about watercoloring with markers. So I'm going to do both today and just kind of show you. Now, let's dive into the color that I'm going to use. I am using this color right here, Joyce's Mother Violet from DaVinci. And the reason why is because I'm obsessed with this color and I love the effects that you get, and I wanted to share that with you. This also gives me an opportunity to talk with you about granulating watercolors, and this is one of those colors. So this particular watercolor is made up of 3 pigments that were dispersed together. So manganese blue hue, phthalo blue, and quinacridone violet. So these 3 colors were put in one tube to make this mix. And I am obsessed with it as far as violets go, because it is just, you can see that blue that's coming out. You can see the granulation that's in the color, and it adds a whole lot extra texture and dimension. And it's the color, it's what I used on the original inspiration. I really like that contrast. But we're going to do it, I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to watercolor it twice. Once with this color, violet, and once with just a plain color to show you how you can get variations of color with one marker. Okay? All right, let's move a few things out of the way. If you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to ask. We have quite a few of us here today, and that's exciting. Okay, one other little fan thing I want to show you. I'm going to use the Joyce's Mother Violet, but here I'm a little bit obsessed with DaVinci Paints. So I'm a little bit obsessed with all kinds of watercolor. And here, I'm going to just pop myself back on here. It's no secret that I'm a little bit obsessed with all kinds of watercolor, and I have lots of different brands. But the DaVinci brand is something that I've just kind of been a little bit low-key obsessed about for a while. I love all kinds of brands. DaVinci is a US made brand, and I just love it. But I recently got this this watercolor pan set that was empty. So this is a Mission Gold. They do sell this on Amazon, triple pans watercolor, and they sell it empty. But they also sell it with 24 of the Mission Gold paints, which I have that, and that's for another lesson. But what I wanted to do, let me get this open, see if I can get it open. There we go. What I wanted to do is just kind of share this really unique palette. So this slides out like this, and you've got like a little mixing space. You have some mixing space here, and then you've got all of these pans, and it's got this little like protective piece that goes over top of it. So I just squeezed out some of my my watercolors and kind of popped them in here just to have them on the go. And I did a little little sheet that just kind of tells me, a little swatch sheet. But the reason why I'm obsessed with this is, look, it fits in your hand, kind of like a phone. So really great to like take around the house or to move in a different place that you're, working in. And I really like it because you can get a lot of pans, you can get a lot of colors in there. So it's really nice. Okay, here's that Joyce's Mother Violet that we're going to go. Now I've rambled, I've nerded out quite a bit for like a couple minutes now. So let's get to it, right? All right, I'm a lefty, so I'm going to move some things around on my place here just so I can get started. Okay, we're going to paint this one in the pan set, and then we're going to paint this one in the Karen brush marker. So I'm going to go ahead and just start to I'm going to hold this in my hand, which is another really cool thing about this. Now, the brush that I'm using is a number 3 Princeton round. Now, I recommend when we have a small, because this technique today is not one of my typical washy techniques. This technique is a little more precise, but it is a really easygoing way to do it. Dawn just shared I got my portable painter this week. Oh, I love that portable painter too. I've got that full of DaVinci too. Love it. Okay. Now, my brush is wet. My paper is dry. I'm going to start to get a mix. Here's my violet. And I'm just going to start to put some of that violet down on this little palette so that I can work with it. Okay. Clean off my brush. Brush is wet. Paper's dry. Not sopping wet though. I'm going to lift up some of my pigment and I'm going to start with this back flower. We're back petal, and we're going to work one little bit at a time. And I'm kind of choked up here on my brush. And you can see I'm laying down a lot of pigment here. And I'm just kind of hovering around the top. Okay, clean off my brush. And now we're just going to work with the colors, work with the pigment that we have on the paper. And my brush is wet, paper's dry, and you can see I'm just taking what's here and drawing it down, meaning painting it down into the center of my flower. And just working with the pigment that's here. So this technique is very controlled. Not super, super washy, but we are using the color and we're just drawing it down, like painting it down into the center. So our darks are up on the outer edge and our lights are down here. Now I can go back in and I can add a little bit more of the dark color at the tip and just let it be. Okay. Now this technique takes just a smidge longer than it would if you were watercoloring and doing like what we did last week, which was just splashing watercolor around. Washy technique. All right, I'm cleaning off my brush. And now I'm going to move to a different petal. I'm probably going to move over to this petal. Now, when you have a stamped image of flowers that has, like, you can start to see like the concaveness of it and maybe the outer edge of the flower, you could really work with those edges if you want to. So see how here's a fold, kind of folding in, and then here's the like outer edge of the flower and then the back showing. A couple things you can do. You can ignore it completely and just fold it into the mix here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ignore it completely and fold it into the mix. Or you can just account for it and you do a lighter side and a darker side. I'm going to keep this simple today. Super simple. I'm going to take some creative license here. Brush is wet, paper's dry. So wet into dry. Take some creative license here and just add my color as if that's just a petal that's facing forward. Just putting my color in here as if that is a petal that's facing towards us. We can't see the back or the side. Just taking that creative license. And you can do that with your stamped images. Especially like any of the detailed flower images that you might have in your stash. You can see I'm pulling this down. Using this color and pulling this down. Patty just shared, do you have that color wheel for sale or download file? Yes, Patty, I have that color wheel. Not for sale, it's for free. You can grab it over in my community, my free community on my classroom. You can become a member for free and it's there with the Mission Gold, download and actually with all the colors. So if you look at the link in my description, you'll see the link for the community and you can grab it over there in the free downloads neighborhood. It's super easy. Doesn't cost you anything. Super easy. Okay. I hope that helps. I'm just taking this color, cleaning off my brush in between and just kind of pulling that down and in. Now, the reason why I wanted to use this Joyce's Mother's green color, Mother Violet color from DaVinci, this mix, is because look at what's happening. Look at the variations of the color. The pigments are separating And they are, let's get a little more of that violet over here. They are starting to reveal themselves. You can see that violet. I mean, you can see that quinacridone violet. You can see the blue. I'm adding a little bit of the darkness to the tips right here. As it dries, look at how that color is separated. I'll bring it up a little closer so that you can see. But you can see this technique is very controlled, and I'm only working petal to petal. Oh, I'm digging it. I am digging it. Look at that. Okay, you can see how that color separates. Now, every watercolor brand that you have in your stash or that's out there has colors that are mixes. And mix either one color, two color, three colors, and you can get this technique going with many colors in your stash. Okay, I'm going to move to this petal. You can see I've got full strength amount of pigment on my brush, and I'm dropping it in here, and I'm going to just pull. My brush is clean now, and I'm going to pull this down. See how I'm just working on that edge? I'm not touching that top, and I'm just pulling it down. Now, you could do this technique. I know I'm using watercolors today from the tube. You could do this same technique with any watercolor medium. You could do it with pencils. You could do it with ink tints. You could do it with your your Gina K inks. Same technique. Wet into dry. You're just taking this technique and applying it using the mediums that you have in your stash. I'm going to add a little bit to that middle. So see how I'm able to get lights to darks, and it starts to give us some shape to that flower. Now, real quick, I've showed this little graphic, and I've talked about this in many tutorials, but I want to kind of go over it again with you because I think it's like super, super important. And you're hearing me talk about my brush is wet, the paper is dry. This is water ratios. So you can change what your pigment looks like on your paper simply by adding water. So when I'm getting started here, you can see I have a little bit of water and a whole lot of pigment. So I've got, like, when I say the pigment, I'm loading the pigment on the paper in full strength. That's what I mean, this whole milk, full strength. If I'm adding less water, more pigment, that 2%, it's a stronger value of the color, but not as strong as when the color is at whole milk, when the pigment's at whole milk. And then a wash is when I'm like, what I'm kind of doing down here at the bottom. I'm drawing that color from the top of the petal down to the bottom. And so my value is graduating from a whole milk to a skim milk in the middle to a 2% milk in the middle to a skim milk at the bottom. I hope that kind of helps you think through water ratios, water to paint ratios. You have full control over the way your pigment, your watercolor looks simply by adding water. And that's what makes it super fun. That's what makes it fascinating to me, and exciting. I get excited. I'm getting a little bit nerdy about it right now. This whole lesson today is, like I said, less focused on our card making and more focused on being like nerded out by watercolor today. I hope you enjoy it. All right, I'm cleaning off my brush. Things are starting to dry here, which is good because we're going to add another layer. We're going to glaze in a little bit. I'm drying off my brush, cleaning it up. I'm going to pick up some pigment. I'm picking up at like full strength, that whole milk. I'm going to work on this petal. And right here, I'm going to just use artistic license and have that petal not fold. I'm just going to have it look like it's coming towards us. So I'm going to start at the top here. And when I say easygoing watercolor, this is easygoing, no line watercolor, where you can get some realistic effects without, like, what I would call your head hurting, without the freak out mode of am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Is the sun in the right spots? Should my shadow be here? Who cares, right? If you were doing botanical art, and I've done botanical art, friends, if you were doing botanical art and you were going for scientifically accurate painting, that's a whole different kind of lesson. But today we are just focusing on getting some like realistic sort of fun results in an easy going watercoloring. I'm digging this, and I kind of overwatered it a little bit. Sort of like I overwater some of my plants. But you can see the outer edge is dark, and then as I'm graduating, my value of color is graduating from dark to light. Loving it, digging it. You can start to see that it's coming together and shaping it up. Okay, everybody's giving me the thumbs up with nerd away. Okay, good, because it's who I am, folks. It's who I am. I just get really excited about sharing and teaching. It's kind of my superpower. So, and really breaking down these big concepts into really small bite-sized lessons. So I hope that's super, super helpful. Okay, I'm going to come in. Now we're going to work on another petal. Now that one's a little bit wet. We're going to come over here, and we've got this petal right here that's sort of inside of this petal and this petal. And I'm not thinking about it too much. Now, when your stamped images that have a lot of petals, the only thing I would suggest is that you paint them one petal at a time if you're doing this technique. If you're doing our super washy technique that we did last week, just go for it. Just splatter color all over it and have fun with it. Okay, I've got some concentrated color right here. So this part of the petal is darker. You can see this is that part of the petal, and it's lighter. So we've got a different value there. So it helps us, those dark to light values help us identify like where the petals are. Okay, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Just kind of keep that concentration of that dark color up there. And bringing this down a little bit. Now, I've got my two values between these two petals are very light. And I want to get some definition between this petal and that petal. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to go whole milk, whole ham here. Whole milk, lots of pigment on my paper, on my brush. And I'm going to come in and just kind of drop some very gently along that line so that I can get some definition between those two petals. And you can start to see that it's bringing this whole, let's get that out. This whole thing is bringing us to a little bit more of a realistic look, sort of, with our stamps, right? I'm just taking the very tip of my brush here and blending this out. It's clean. It's got water. Just clean water in my brush. And I'm going to leave my lights in here. Just kind of let that dry. All right, we got a quick question. I got two questions here. Marianne, let's just pop your question onto the screen. Does it depend on the type of flower, dark on the top versus the base of the flower? And you know what? It's such a great question. Actually, let me put that back up. Mary, that's such a great question. Let me go ahead and pop them. No. It doesn't depend on the type of flower. And the reason why, for our stamped images. Now, if you were approaching this from a realistic, scientific, botanical watercolor painting, you would be adding a lot more factors into it. Like, where is the light coming from? Observing the plant and seeing where the lights and the darks are. But with our stamped images, I tend to work my darks on the tip of the petals and work my lights down into the center. Because if you take a peek at a flower, and I was just looking over here to see my flowers. If you take a peek at a flower, you'll see that it's dark to light there. So I hope that was super helpful. All right, we've got another question. Cheryl just asked, "What color ink did you stamp the image on, and how long do you need to wait so it doesn't bleed?" Okay, great question. I used the lovely lavender, and here's why. You can just pick a color that's close, like lighter in value than the color you're using to paint with. So lovely lavender is like my lightest value of color when I'm blending it out. So ideally the lovely lavender will disappear. The watercolor I stamped it before we got started, and that's okay because it will dry, but it'll also lift up a little bit because these are water-based inks. So you just want to go with the lightest color. You could also use amalgams. You could use black if you wanted to. I hope that answers that question. Okay. All right. Let's dive back in to where we are. Let's just go ahead and get my face off the screen so you can see the paint. And we've got like one more petal. Nancy just asked, what number is your brush? Ooh, here we go. It's a number 3. Number 3 round. And I just grabbed the smallest, just a really small brush because we're working on kind of a small image. Grace's Art Watercolors. Hi, Lisa. It's Mary. It's our first time here. Welcome, Mary. Welcome. Excited to see you here. And you have Grace's Art Watercolor. So you like watercolor too. I love that. All right, we've got one more petal. So you can start to see that our petals have some shape, right? They feel like they're doing this, which is gorgeous. I'm going to come in. Ooh, I've got a little bit too much water. I'm going to come in with that Joyce's Mother Green. And I'm going to work on this petal right here. And I'm going to put some color down and around. Friends, I hear my cat in another room being incredibly mischievous. Oh my goodness. Cat doesn't give me the time of day till I get on these lives, and then I hear him start to do some things. Grace just asked what kind of watercolor, since this was your first stream with us. Okay, no problem, no problem. Strathmore Ready Cut Watercolor, 100% cotton, cold press. Love it for paper crafting projects. And Grace, Mary, since this is your first time, all of the supplies that I have are linked down below in the description, along with some other goodies. So take a peek. Okay, cleaned off my brush. I'm going to work with the paint that's there. If you feel like your brush has too much water, trust your intuition and just dab your brush off a little bit. Okay. Mary just said watercolor is her favorite medium. Well, you are in good company because all of our friends here love watercolor too, and I love all the things. I especially love mediums that allow me to get watercolor effects. So, and then I can share that with you. So I love it. Okay, my darks are here, my lights are here. So check this out. This is our first layer. So we can start to see some shape here, and I'm loving it. Now, you could let this go as it is, or we can kind of go in and add a little bit more intensity in color. And I think we're going to do that. We're going to just glaze a little bit more. And glazing is just the fancy watercolor term for layering more color. So you will hear me use those terms interchangeably, glazing and layering. So right now I'm just going to go, I'm adding up full strength, like 100% milk pigment, just on my tips. I like the graduation of color that I got going here. Just going to add a little bit to the tips just to create a little more contrast. Now, you can see that lovely lavender line is still there, but I'm okay. I'm digging it. We're going to leave it. I'm going to come back to my first one here. Now, glazing, layering, glazing. This technique works better when your project and your paper is completely dry, because the luminosity, as you add layers of color, especially paints that are super transparent like these DaVinci paints, the luminosity, your project starts to glow. It becomes so luminous, it starts to glow. Okay. All right, I see everybody chatting in the chat. Do you have a favorite type of paper for me? Oh, Heidi just asked a quick question. Do you have a favorite type of paper from when you're doing non-paper crafting projects? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. My favorite paper to use is the Arches brand of paper. It is 100% cotton, watercolor, comes in a lot of different ways. But for the kind of style of painting that I do, which is super wet and washy, as you all know, because you've been watching me for a while, tend to splash a lot of water and paint around. The Arches paper, or Arches, I don't know, everybody calls it something different. It's green. If I could, I might be able to grab some to show it to you. That paper takes a lot of water. It's got a lot of great fibers in it. It takes a lot of water. So I hope that helps, Heidi. Hope that helps. Okay. Love the colors too. Arches is my favorite paper too. I love it too. I just tend not to grab the Arches paper for my paper crafting projects, because I'm making such a volume of projects a lot with watercolor, that I really have enjoyed using the Strathmore Ready Cut watercolor. I really feel like it's a good affordable option for our paper crafting projects. So that's why I recommend it like over and over and over again. Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to let this, let me just add a little bit more. I'm going to glaze a little bit more at the top here, because I use that granulating color. You can see how it's separating a little bit. So adding that darker color at the tip is allowing me to just jack up that luminosity a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit right here. Now, one of the questions I get a lot is, how do you know when to stop? Well, friends, sometimes I don't know when to stop. I keep going, and then all of a sudden I've gone too far. So with my stamped images, because we're talking about watercoloring stamped images today, with my stamped images, I tend to do layers in one layer or two layers. And that's how I know when to stop. I'm digging this. All right, I'm going to bring this up. I feel like we've got a nice variation of dark to light values. Look at that particular color. You can see right here, I've got a little interesting thing going with a bloom of water. I love how that's granulated. Now, that's kind of like a specialty paint, right? That's a paint, a watercolor paint. Let's do the same technique over here with a marker. Now, I just grabbed my Karen brush marker. That's what this is. You could use any kind of water-based brush marker that you have, a Tombow, a Zig, like all these different kinds of markers. So, yeah, I can see everybody chit-chatting about Arches. And yes, it takes a beating and you just keep coming back for more. That's what I love about it. It takes a beating and you keep coming back for more because it has so much nice fiber content. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead. Oops, I got a little splooshy on there. A little splooshy of paint. That's all right. We're going to work it out. I'm going to take my Karen brush marker and I'm not going to do direct to paper. I'm just going to do a little scratchy of it down here. And then I'm going to add some water to it. Ooh, what's happening here? I can't get my lid on. There we go. Here we go. I'm adding water here. Now the value of this, the hue of this color is different. This is a lot more dark. This is more of a lilac. So we're going to get started. Look at that. I've kind of bunched myself in. We're going to get started over here. And again, I'm working from the top. Now, what I want to say about markers is that I tend to work a little faster. But we're doing the same technique. And you can see I'm working kind of fast. And I'm keeping my paper wet, cleaning off my brush, and then starting to blend. What I have found with using 100% cotton and markers is that I got to work a little faster because they dry a little quicker. But you can see that I'm just using what's here and I'm blending it down into the center. So if you have a marker or you want to do this with watercolor pencils or ink tints, same technique, different medium, you can get the same kind of effects. We've got that dark to light, whole milk to skim milk. Okay, coming in. Let's go ahead. Dawn just said she just ordered her Joyce's mother, Violet. Friend, you will not be disappointed in the DaVinci paints. Here's why. They always run a ton of sales. They're less expensive than a Daniel Smith, which I love Daniel Smith, friends. I absolutely do. But sometimes you can get overwhelmed by the 300 some colors that they have, and I love it. But I feel like the DaVinci paints are a little more transparent. And if you are, I've talked about a lot of different brands on this channel. Mission Gold is a great affordable brand. Paul Rubens. Just start with something that fits your budget, and then work your way up as you feel like you want to work your way up. You do not need all the watercolor brands that I have in my stash. For those of you here that take Watercolor Wonderland in my classroom, you know, because I showed you all of my colors. Nancy just shared she's so happy she's getting her order today. Nancy, is that your Gina K order coming today? I'm adding a little bit. See, I'm adding a little bit to the tip here. And I'm getting that variation of color, dark to light. You can see, even though this is a violet, a lilac, we're getting two different kinds of looks from it. I'm digging it. And you can see I'm working kind of a little bit faster. I'm also splooshing. You can see I'm splashing and splooshing that color. Dawn just shared the DaVinci. Yeah, if you buy directly from DaVinci, it is a little, they have, like I said, they have a lot of sales and markdowns on their products versus buying it from Amazon or Dick Blick or other art supply places. Because remember, the DaVinci paint, and I'm not sponsored by them. Oh, please, no. Or anything. I just like to share what I have observed and what I've used. And I'm also a really big believer in doing my best to try to support small businesses. And DaVinci is a family-owned business made here in the USA, which and I like their paints, and I've been using them for years. So love it. Nancy just said, yes, you're Gina K. I'm excited for you. Okay, we've got that dark to light. I'm adding a little bit more at the top while this is still wet, just slightly wet. You can see over here as it's dried, we've got, with our marker, that outline is happening. So what's happening is the marker wants to run to the outer edge of the water and where that is. When we do our glazing layer, we might be able to shape that up a little bit. It's not a bad look. I kind of like it. I like it when watercolor blooms and just kind of finds its way through the water and flows. Okay. Got that darker. Kind of went all ham there. Cleaned off my brush. I need a little bit more water on my brush. Okay. Let's just take that color and blend it down. How are we doing on time? We might run a little over the hour, but maybe not. Like I said, today's was a little bit more of a focused lesson on watercolor and how it applies to our card projects versus me walking you through how to make a card. And friends, I would really like to know how you feel about that. I always try to embed a watercolor lesson into the card making project. But today we're focused a little less on the technical aspects of me telling you how to make a card and how to die cut and how to do those things. And we're focused on the watercolor lesson more. And I'm taking a deeper dive into that lesson just to add more value to the experience here with you. So let me know what you think about that. We're all, many of us here are paper crafters as well as watercolor enthusiasts. And I'd like to know if that's something you're interested in. Me sharing less of the technical aspects of how to make that card, what dye I use, what this, what that, and more on how I created the color effects, the watercolor effects for the card. So just me being a little nerdy. Okay. Now I've given this some time to dry because I went into like little chat mode there. So let's go ahead and I've got 2 more petals. You can see where you see these little blooms here. And what I mean by blooms, you can see where the water is pushing back the color and making that line. That's called blooming. And I like it. A lot of artists, like a lot of watercolor artists and fine watercolor artists don't love that. They want smoothie blends. But I like the blooms because I think it adds a little extra texture. We've got a couple people popping in late. That's okay. You're just catching us a little later, and you can always catch the replay. We've been nerding out together as friends all about watercolor, and today it's literally been a super duper concentrated watercolor lesson, and less focused on all of the things that make up a card. So yeah, I'm hearing everybody's kind of sharing more on creating effects. Love the watercolor aspect, more on creating. I love that. I just love being able to ask you because sometimes, my intuition is telling me, hey, focus on your superpower of teaching. We're all card makers and paper crafters. They probably don't care how I got to creating that card. They probably care more about like how did I create those effects, those color effects to kind of make that card happen. And Heidi just shared I prefer the more nerdy focus on watercolor and less on how to create the card. Love it. Cheryl just said the blooming gives me that free watercolor feel. Yes. And that's why I think it's fun to let it bloom and let it go. It's less of a smoothie watercolor and it's more, you get more blooms and you get a little bit more texture. Okay. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 petals. And we can see it in the lilac versus here. So this is a lot darker than the marker. And you can see with the marker, my lines are a little more, see how that blooming is happening. So what happens is the pigment in the marker gets pushed back to the edge of where the line is, where it just goes where the water is. Now, I happen to like that technique. I happen to like it in the way it looks because I feel like it gives that flower definition, and I happen to like it a lot. But if you're trying to kind of smooth out, we can go in and do another layer, a little bit of glazing, clean off my brush, kind of pop that in, draw this down, and you can recover that line a little bit. You can soften it a little bit by adding a little bit of glazing. You can see this line right here with the marker. Okay, dig that. Just adding a little bit. Sue just here, what's a good beginner watercolor brush and size? Okay, I've talked a little bit about brushes in the past, and I know it's been in the context of things. I prefer a good beginner watercolor brush is, if you don't have, start with one of the ones you can get at your big box store. Personally, I like these Princeton Heritage brand because they do hold a lot of water, but not as much water as a silver black velvet that I usually use. So you can feel like you have a lot more control with this brand. Um, so you can get those on Amazon. But if you have like a local big box or art supply store, Michael's or something like that, you can walk in and grab like the Cotman watercolor brushes. They'll do really well for you. And number 3 is kind of small. I like 6, 8, and 10 rounds, always rounds, because they come to a nice point. So I hope that. Okay, Heidi just shared. Someone asked. Oh, thank you, Heidi, for sharing that. Someone asked earlier, and if you answered, I missed it. I probably didn't answer it. So I'm not sure who asked the question, but I missed this question. Could you mix some of the both of the marker and the watercolor? Yes, you can. You can, and I'll show you how. Jane said color creation. That being said, it's all good. I love the blooms and the defined edges. Exactly. I like the defined edges too. Cheryl just said, I'm confused. What is glazing versus layering? I'm going to pop that up, Cheryl. And I'm going to pop on the screen for a quick second. Don't be confused. No worries. They're one and the same. So glazing is the watercolor term that you'll hear. But basically what you're doing is layering. So you hear me use them interchangeably, and you'll hear other artists use them interchangeably. So don't be confused. They're exactly the same. And yeah, you were in the Watercolor Wonderland class, and you can go back and look at that if you want, but there is, because I talked about it like ad nauseum, but don't be confused. No worries. They are one in the same. Okay? Okay, so now you can see, I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to add a little bit. I'm bringing the darks back to some of these areas. And I'm digging it, and I'm going to resist the urge to keep messing with this. Now, with using a marker, I'm going, let's see if I can lift some of that color away a little bit. With using a marker, you can see that my edges are a little bit harsher than they are over here, and that was okay. Marianne just shared that was you, that it was her question. Great, Marianne, I hope I answered that question. Thank you, Heidi, for letting me know I missed it. It's always super helpful because sometimes these things fly by really quickly, and I might miss a question. So now one of the questions was, can we use a can we use the marker and watercolor paint together? Okay. And the answer is yes. So you can mix your mediums, and I'm a huge, huge fan of mixing mediums. As you can, and you know, on this channel, I use a lot of different mediums and I use them together. But I also try to show you what they look like when they use them separately. So here is a mix. This is a dried patch of watercolor in that Joyce's Mother Green, Mother Violet. I'm going to add a little bit of that to it, a little bit of that marker, and see, I can just blend right over top of it. Now, the watercolor underneath is not permanent, okay? So it's going to lift a little. So I can come back in here and lift and kind of glaze over it, but I can use these two interchangeably. I can use them together to just kind of create different looks. Okay. Now, Inktense is completely different. So when I recommend, if you want to use markers and watercolor together, play with them. Do the watercolor work first, then add marker on top, or do the marker work first and then add watercolor on top, which I'm going to do just so I can show you. So we've done, especially like on this petal, because I'm not really happy. So I'm going to take a little bit of that. Done my, everything's dry. Checking to make sure it's dry. I'm going to add a little bit of that Mother Violet, Joyce's Mother Violet color. And then just kind of layer it with a little bit of water. And then just add it right on top. So you see, I can mix those two colors together. And I see a new tutorial in our future happening. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and move some things over to the side here because we're going to bring it all home. So let's see. We're going to bring it all home with our pieces. We've got, this was our sample piece. We've got our marker version, and we have our watercolor version. And I'm using the complementary colors. So the complementary color for the yellow is the violet, right? So when I take my violet and I pop it on top of this yellow, it's going to, because it's a complementary color, it's going to make it more vibrant. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to cut that out. But let me just go ahead. Where is my... We're going to bring it all home. I hope that you guys found today's lesson as much fun as I felt while I was sharing it. Because I love to teach and I love sharing all my geeky wisdom with you. All right, I'm putting this down. Now, on my piece of Gina K. White, I just took that postage stamp and created a little pattern. Here's what's going to happen right now. I'm going to wipe this up because I know what's going to happen if I don't. I'm going to wipe it up so I can get it. Won't get it into my yellow card. Okay, a couple things. Dawn just shared, trying to remember that less is more. Pigment on my brush. Remember, less whole milk, skim milk, whole milk, 2% milk, skim milk. Less is more when you're first starting, right? You can start, when we're starting out with a lot of pigment, you're concentrating it in at the top of your petal, then you're just cleaning your brush and you're drawing what you have down. Joanne just said, after you clean the brush in water, are you wiping it off on a towel and going back to the flower? Yes. See my little towel that's over here? It just happens to be off to the side. So I have my water over here. So I'm cleaning my brush, kind of just giving it a little wipe, and then going back into my pigment. Next time I'll make sure that's in the screen so that you can see. Okay, I need to die cut. Which one should we use for the card? Should we use the one on the left or should we use the one on the right? And I'll wait for everybody to kind of just tell me. So here, oh, look at that. I got water on there. Here's my sample where I did the Joyce's Mother White, Mother Violet. Do you want to use the left one or the right one? They're both violet colors, so they're definitely going to be complementary to the yellow. I'm going to go ahead and just cut both of them. So I'm going to step off to the camera, step off to the side here a little bit. I've got my Spellbinders Platinum 6. I'm going to go ahead and cut both of them while you all decide which one we're going to use on the card today. Okay. Here we go. Oh, I'm really digging it. Ooh. That almost fell. All right, let's cut that out. I don't bring the die cutter into the screen because it shakes the table, and that's no fun. All right, let's take a peek. Everybody's saying, we've got left, we've got right. Maybe we'll try to put both in. Got left, left, left. Most people are saying left, and we've got a little bit of the right. Most people are saying left. So let's go ahead. Look, we're going to pop this in, and I'm going to show you. Oh, yeah, I'm digging that. I'm digging both. So I'm going to keep I've got all these embellishments now, right, to make some cards. So let's go ahead. Now, when I die cut this, my die kind of moved a little bit. So I've got this little extra white edge. I'm just going to go in and just kind of trim that off a little bit because I don't want that there. I want it to be a little tighter. And I should really put my glasses on when I use the die cutter, but sometimes I don't. Okay. Add a little bit of glue to the back here. And I'm going to nest that right here. Right here. Love that. Now this piece is going to kind of like go over top of it a little bit, and I'm going to do that cancel. So you guys are having fun in the chat. I love it. I love it. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and put my little leafery. Now, I pre-stamped my leafery with fresh asparagus, and can anyone guess what I did? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? So what I did was, right after I stamped it, I just took my wet brush and just kind of went over it and activated that fresh asparagus and just give that leafery just a little bit of a washy watercolor effect. Yeah, everybody's still talking about like the left or the right, which is kind of fun. So I've got a little bit of glue concentrated down here on this bottom. Might need a little bit more, and I'm just kind of letting this flick up a little bit. Digging that. Now, I'm going to be putting that cancellation piece over there. I want to make sure I leave enough room for my sentiment, and I have, so that's good. Let's go ahead and pop this on. And it'll help hold down that leafery a little bit too. Yeah. We're coming like to the end of the card. Did anybody have any other questions about today? About the format of today's lesson? What did I do with the stamp? What did I do? Oh, I hid it from myself. Love it when I do stuff like that. Here's the little cancellation squigglies, and I'm going to stamp right on top with some of the wild dandelion and just go right across all the way to the outer edge so it kind of comes across there. So this card's got like a lot of yellow on it, right? But it's a complementary color to that violet, and it's making that violet like pop even more. Now we're going to ground the whole thing with the sentiment in the obsidian. I like to use black inks for my sentiments because black is a grounding color in your stamping projects. I'm just free winging it here. Stamp that down. Maybe I got a little bit of sploosh. Did I get a little bit of sploosh there? It looks like I did. Okay. Joanne said, may I come live with you until I can accomplish at least one flower? Oh, that's so sweet of you. So sweet of you. Okay. Digging the way this looks. Loving it. Going to add a little bit of bling-a-ling, right? Let's add a little bit of bling. Got my picker. I've got some, we could have popped a couple more of these in, or could have popped this one in maybe, and had a little bit of a contrast between our two violets, but we're going to stick with the one for now, and I can use the embellishments to make something else. Okay, let's pop a little dot right there, here. I'm just winging it. I'm just popping a bunch of dots in, winging it. Let's see how this little tic-tac thing is working out, right? Let's pick up these are those crystal ball sequins from Gina K. So they have that flat edge to them, which makes them kind of fun. So they have, you know, that concaveness to them. They don't have the hole, which I think is cool. I like it. They're very reflective. Let's see, I want a smaller one. Let's pop a smaller one right there. Wow, I did a pretty good job with the sequins here and not losing them or making it. Now, here's the thing, like, can I get them all back in there? That would be my thing. Like, how do I get them all back in the little Tic Tac thing? Let's just move them over to the side for right now. Okay, kind of digging this. I'm digging the way this card looks. I'm a huge fan of wild dandelion anyway, but I'm digging the way this looks. We've got that complementary color look going and that look and feel. And ultimately, because our yellow complements our violet, what's popping on the card is the violet flower, which is popping. Love it. Okay, let's go ahead back to the front screen. Let's see if I can find my glasses. Are these the ones? I don't know where my glasses are, but okay. Well, you know, we only went 7 minutes over. That's not too bad for a pretty intense watercolor lesson. So I'm seeing everybody share that they enjoyed it. Gorgeous. Love this card. I'm digging it. I'm digging the way this card came out. So it's just, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I kind of jam-packed quite a bit in here, but the focus was really on two things. Watercolor technique, easygoing watercolor technique, wet into dry, and we approached our watercolor, our stamped image with a little bit more of a controlled watercolor technique to create that more 3D effect that in our project, making that flower kind of come to life by changing the values of the color from darks to lights. And I talked a little bit about complementary colors, and specifically today we focused on yellow and violet and how they complement each other. But when you mix them together, they neutralize each other. If you over mix them, you can get mud, which is, you know, if you're going for mud, go for it, right? Okay, I really hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I'm really glad I got to come in this week, you know, over the whole jury duty thing, and not sure if that was happening or if it's still going to happen. So I'm really glad I got to come in this week because I really enjoy coming to you live with tutorials like this. So, and it seems like everyone likes the technique focus a little more than the let me show you how to make the card kind of thing, which kind of makes me happy because I feel like we all have our own card styles, but one of the things that we want to learn together are techniques and tips and tricks and nerding out on things. So fun, fun, fun. Okay. Cheryl just said, thank you. I love your stamp designs. They're simple and doable for beginners. Yes. Your stamps have so many elements. That's very nice. Very nice of you, Cheryl. The intention with my stamp collection with Gina K is that they're all in proportion to each other. That's why I tend to show mashups. I mash them up together on this channel in my live tutorials. So yeah, just to kind of just show you. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I'm really excited. Normally I do my tutorials on Friday, but I'm really liking the Wednesday, sometimes Friday. I'm making some changes over here. So if you bear with me for like a second, I'm making some changes. I might be coming in and doing 2 lives a week. I might stick with the one. I'm making some changes in the Craft Your Joy classroom. I also have a brand new class that just launched there. If you're on my email list, you got that in your email this week. And it's this. There's a whole series of mini classes there called Whimsical Watercolor. And this one is Wildflowers in a Welly. Super affordable. I am going to be expanding the classroom and looking at some ways to do that. So I'm going to be sharing more with you about that over time because there's just only so much I can get into a lesson in an hour on YouTube. So I'm looking for some ways to expand getting these lessons out to you. So I hope everyone has a really great day. I'm sending you into the rest of the week to craft your joy. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next week, friends. If you're on my email list, You'll find out when I'm going live. You can catch it in the social medias. You can also, if you're not on my email list and you want to be, the links are in the description, and I hope to see you there. Okay, friends, I'm seeing everybody say goodbye. And yes, it is Mother's Day weekend, and I am a mother. So, yeah, I kind of forget about that one sometimes. So, Nancy just shared it was a perfect day for her because she didn't have to go to work. Sounds like fun is headed. Yes, some fun is coming. I'm making some changes. So, some really good fun with some content. So, all right, friends, have a really great weekend. And again, I'm sending you in the weekend to into the rest of the week to craft your joy. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thanks so much for your support. It means so much to me, and I'm so, so grateful. All right, friends, have a great weekend.